Hugh Rowland was a big hit on reality TV. Real rough and not afraid to show it. He got around on ice road truckers like it was no big deal, tearing across frozen roads like it was no big deal. But behind all that swagger was a man who had spent his whole life fighting the cold, the loneliness and the constant fear of bad things happening. He was the thing that the show was about. Fans were left wondering what happened when he disappeared all of a sudden. Why would a guy who liked being in danger leave? Hugh's story really did go in a bad direction. One that was full of loss, pain, and a side of him that the cameras never caught. We need to go back and see where it all started in order to understand it. Hugh Rowland, who friends call the polar bear, became known as one of the toughest truckers in the world. A lot of people have seen him drive on some of the worst roads if they've ever watched an episode of Ice Road Truckers on the History Channel. In the northern wilds of North America, there are frozen lakes, blizzards, and paths that are far away. Hugh's story began in Kelowna, British Columbia, a long time before he became famous on reality TV. He had worked hard since he was born in 1957. He was already driving around his family's farm by the time he was 6 years old. He was getting good at driving big machines while most kids were still learning how to ride bikes. Early training like that prepared them to work with big rigs and do dangerous jobs for the rest of their lives. His tough background shaped who he is today. It was cold in rural BC in the winter, and people had to learn how to push through hard times. He learned how to work hard in that setting, and it stuck with him. He didn't think twice when the chance came up to drive goods over frozen roads to faraway gold and diamond mines. He was only 16 years old. Someone asked him to make a delivery up north, and the pay was better than anything he had seen at that age. That's right, he said yes right away. Hugh Rowland didn't think about fame or TV cameras when he was only 15 years old. In the Northwest Territories, where he was only a youth, he was driving a big rig over some of Canada's most dangerous roads. To be exact, ice roads. Paths that are slippery and frozen and could break at any time. The kind of roads that didn't care what age you were. But Rowland was tough. He wasn't going to give up because the job was hard or the weather was crazy. He just loved driving trucks. He kept going because of love. Now it's 2007. And Rowland's hard work is about to take him somewhere he never thought possible on TVs across the country. That year, the people who made the television show Ice Road Truckers for the History Channel were looking for drivers with real experience, real stories, and steely nerves. Rowland did everything they asked, but he didn't believe a word of it when they first called him. He thought a friend was playing a joke on him. How often does a TV network really want to follow a trucker into the Arctic? Rowland didn't throw open the doors when they told him they wanted to watch him drive up to Yellowknife with cams in his trucks. They were told that the roads were closed for the season, but they could try again next year if they were ready. They did it. He was ready to start work when those makers showed up at his door a year later. That's when it hit him. It wasn't a joke, it was real. The chance to be on a hit show might make some people jump at the chance, but Rowland was never after the attention. He had his mind on the job. You can have cams or not. He had to pay his bills and haul loads. From the start, it was clear that he didn't want the film crew to get in his way, slow him down, or mess with his money. From his point of view, he didn't think anyone would want to watch trucks drive on frozen roads. He didn't think it was interesting to watch people drive in the bitter cold on empty, icy roads. But as soon as the cameras started rolling, the people saw him wrong. Drawn in by the unvarnished mix of grit, danger, and raw survival. Hugh said that some people didn't understand how important the job was. Even though the show looked crazy, it didn't really show what it was like to risk your life out there. He didn't like it when people called them cowboys because it wasn't about getting thrills to him. It was about being careful with the ice. If someone does something wrong, they won't be coming home. When the first season came out, it was shown on Channel 5 in the UK in early 2008. There, All-Star and Foxtel picked it up around the same time, and Network 10 joined in June of that year. It was on RTL 7 in the Netherlands by fall. It was shown on the History Channel in Italy, a little later, in January 2010, under the name Gli Eroi del Ghiaccio, which means Heroes of the Ice. As soon as it played, the hits were crazy. More than 3.4 million people watched, making it the History Channel's biggest original hit in more than 10 years. It also got a lot of bad reviews. Some said it was gripping. Others were surprised by how deep the show went, and how these drivers, who were often completely worn out and freezing, kept going with just a turning wheel and a steel nerve. Hugh laughed at how the show made them look like thrill-seeking daredevils when it was really work that could mean life or death. He saw the point of it. People kept coming back because the drama kept them on the edge of their seats. He said that people were hooked on the danger. What made the show stand out was how it always walked on the edge between life and disaster. He had driven for years on the ice. The pay was nice, but it wasn't what kept him coming back season after season. There was something in his blood that made him feel it. But the job was hard. It was very cold, there were long stretches away from home, and there was always the chance that this trip could be the last. He was ready for the next season though. He looked forward to the road every time he left. He already missed it every time he got home. Hugh knew how to use the cams in his own way. They were limited in what parts of his world they could see. He had mixed thoughts about it all, now that he looks back on it. Not being known didn't worry him, but he never wanted to be the center of attention. He would have rather blended in with the crowd if possible. He always said he liked being alone. He would smile for a picture or sign an autograph if someone asked, but it never felt like he was himself. When someone gave him a pen, he'd think for a second, what the hell am I even supposed to write? But with Hugh the work didn't end when the cameras went away. Once diamond and gold mines were found in the farthest northern desert, there was a huge need for supplies and brave drivers like Hugh. Even though the work was dangerous, the high pay made it hard to say no. Hugh wasn't just driving all the time. He was putting money into the rigs. He was already well known in the business by the time Ice Road Truckers started airing on TV. Rowland wasn't just another driver at that point. He was already a big deal in that cold world, known for having guts and grit. It wasn't hard to see why guys kept signing up for these jobs when they heard they could make a year's pay in just a few hard months. Reports say that some of the experienced pros were making more than $100,000 a season. It's tempting, right? There was a catch though with that money. It was risky to make every run. Hugh once talked about how scary it sounds when ice cracks under a fully loaded rig. It wasn't just disturbing, it was scary. Some newbies would hear that sound and never get past the first haul. Still, Rowland had a unique quality about him that made him stand out. He quickly became a fan favorite on Ice Road Truckers, not just because he was a great driver, but also because he had a strong personality. His name stuck out in people's minds, the Polar Bear. The name came from a bug screen on one of his trucks, which is pretty cool. But as people got to know him better, the name seemed to fit him better and better. Hugh was big and rough, and he gave off an intense, unfiltered vibe. He even said that he was the type of man who wouldn't think twice about getting into a fight if he was pushed. The name Polar Bear stuck with him, and came to mean everything about him. Few jobs are as dangerous as being an ice road truck driver every winter. Picture it. Huge 18-wheelers bearing tens of thousands of pounds of cargo are rolling across frozen lakes in the middle of nowhere in Canada as the temperature drops to -60 degrees. It's not just a job, it's a tightrope walk that keeps you from getting paid and getting hurt. Every mile of that icy highway is full of excitement, but the risk is also there. People just can't take their eyes off of that part. At the center of this dangerous world is Hugh Rowland, who has been on the ice roads for a long time. Rowland's book On Thin Ice shows the harsh truth based on a lifetime of experience and more stories than most people could handle. He starts with an important point. No one has ever been saved after their truck went through the ice. The tone is set by a sad truth, but things get even worse. The rough landscape has claimed the lives of 35 friends and family members of Rowland. Those kinds of numbers don't just show how dangerous things are. They change what it means to be in danger. But Rowland isn't just here to scare you. He has a lot of respect for the frozen roads he's been on for many years. He said that most terrible things happen because someone wasn't paying attention or was going too fast. He leaves his window open all the time, even when it's very cold, just to hear the ice. Because that shaking and popping sounds like the road talking to him. The ice could swallow you whole if you don't listen. He told one news source that he has pretty much frozen every part of his body over the years. He got frostbite on his face and fingers and was stuck in his truck for 3 days in the snow. It's not about being tough when it's as cold as -60 below zero. It has to do with how much you value the cold. It only takes minutes for hypothermia to set in. Failure of an organ or cold are real risks. They are always a part of the situation. There's also a science to making it out there alive. Rowland said that the ice can only hold a certain amount of weight, and that it's all about moving. A truck might be able to pull up to 100,000 pounds while it's moving, but only 60,000 pounds when it's stopped. Why? The truck stops and starts to press straight down, and the ice below can't move the weight around. You can punch a hole in the floor if you stop for too long, and a rig is gone after it goes under. Most of the time, new drivers learn the hard way. Some people freeze with fear when they hear the ice cracking under their wheels. Rowland says that they need to be taken off the lake and sent back because they are taking too long to decide what to do. He told me to always be moving. As soon as you stop, everything is on the line. The show put a lot of emphasis on strong competition, but Rowland didn't agree with that. He didn't see it as a dramatic battle between cars. It was just a job. The main goal was to haul as many loads as possible before the roads closed for the season. It was a hard 24-hour job. This probably won't be a surprise to people who watch reality TV. Many of the things that are shown are edited to make them more dramatic and add to the sense of competition. There were clear winners and losers on the show, but Rowland said that most drivers weren't paying attention to that. Their goal was easy to understand. Do your job and don't try to get famous or chase after fake awards. To be honest, it might have been better if they weren't running. It was already hard enough for these drivers to steer these huge trucks over frozen lakes and through whiteouts. It's possible that adding a real competition would have made things worse. In terms of drama and relationships, if you watched the first few seasons, you may have noticed that the group was mostly men. Lisa Kelly didn't show up until the 3rd season. Rowland thought that might be true. He thought that the makers might have hired her to make things more interesting and maybe even get a few more people to watch. Rowland sometimes talked about Lisa as if she was still learning, but that wasn't always the case. Lisa had been caring for Carl transportation for many years before she was ever in a movie. She even told David Letterman that she had been driving a truck for 7 years. Rowland thanked her in comments for making people aware of the show. He said that she was being trained on camera by being shown how to handle the big rooms. He thought she was turning into a pretty good little trucker. He did sound like he thought her main job was more about being interesting to watch than being a serious truck driver at times. Over time, Lisa proved them wrong by driving on the same dangerous roads as the others, and even appearing in the spin-off show Deadliest Roads, where she drove on dangerous roads in India and South America. She put anyone's worries to rest. There were some tough spots in Rowland's journey on the show. He talked openly about some of the hard times, especially when it came to leading his team. In a chat with YouTuber Joshua Nanny, Rowland talked about how shooting started to affect his business. In front of the cameras, he had faith in his crew. Things changed though when the camera was on them. After focusing on their work for a while, his drivers started to want fame and notice. In the end, Rowland had to make the tough choice to fire all of them. Even though they were no longer on the show, the attention stayed on those former drivers. Rowland brought in new members quietly and got back to work over time. He said that the cameras didn't stand out unless they were shooting something important. He didn't even notice they were there because he was focused on the work at hand. Rowland was a major character on the show for 8 years, becoming a mainstay and even showing up in a few spin-offs. But in 2014 he suddenly stopped being in the show. It wasn't because of differences in creativity or leaving early. A bad car crash that turned his life upside down really pushed him away from the ice. Rowland wasn't even driving when the crash happened. Will Morrison, one of the show's producers, was driving, and he was going shotgun. Court records say Morrison lost control of his car and crashed into a group of trees on a Canadian road.
Rowland eventually went to court against Morrison, saying he had been driving carelessly. The crash did cause more than just bruises though. Rowland was hurt badly in the lower half of his body. He said that his injuries were so bad that they made it impossible for him to drive trucks for a living, which was his whole life's goal. That was the end of the case, but it didn't end there. It was also said by Rowland that the accident had hurt his personal life, especially his wife. He said that the injuries made it hard for him to be close to his wife, and that the physical and mental effects had caused big problems at home. Rowland said that the crash had hurt not only his work but also a very personal part of his life. TMZ picked up the story and wrote about it. Rowland doesn't really feel anything about ice road truckers today. He never really watched it, even when he was in it. Rowland said on an old YouTube video that he had only seen about 3 episodes, all of which were from promotional events for the show when it was first starting out. On the other hand, his family and friends were huge fans and always asked him about scenes from the show. Rowland, however, said he didn't like seeing himself on TV. And since he was living it, he didn't want to watch it again. Rowland has moved his attention away from the press since he left the show. He's putting all of his energy into his building company and spending more time with his family. In spite of everything that's happened to him, he's still made money. He is 64 years old and is said to be worth about $2 million. This makes him the richest ice road trucker cast member ever. Even though the road is different, Rowland is still going his own way.